employed almost 5,000 workers. Today, there were only 700 inside to watch the last car roll off the assembly line. 300 almost immediately lost their jobs when it was finished. The last 400 workers will go next month. GM built this plant in 1936 to satisfy the West Coast's unquenchable thirst for cars. In the 1940s, it built tanks for the war effort. But in recent years, California's taste in cars has shifted strongly toward imports. And even though the plant was thoroughly modernized recently, GM says there just aren't enough buyers for the cars made here to keep it open.
What's shutting us down is the economy. I think it started way back with the oil embargo, high price of fuel, high price of everything, price of cars, extreme high price of interest rates. People aren't buying the product.
In just the past year, 78,000 Chevys and Cadillacs have rolled off this assembly line, but now it is closed. For how long, nobody really knows. One GM official, when asked if maybe the company is thinking about building tanks on this line again, said, yeah, maybe there'd be a better market for them. In Southgate, Gene Gleason, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And there's a bitter irony in effect. The plant will be kept in a state of readiness pending talks between GM and Toyota. The possibility exists that Toyotas could be produced here in Southgate.
School days may be over for some, Tawny. The University of Southern California
is in plain view today in Southgate. The last car at the General Motors plant there rolled off the assembly line. It's a white 1982 Cadillac Cimarron, and it represents the apparent end of the line for the 46-year-old factory. The closure also means trouble for 2,500 workers who tonight face dim job prospects. A company spokesman says the Southgate plant will be mothballed indefinitely, although it will be maintained in case it's needed in the future. The Southgate plant churned out more than 4 million GM vehicles since it opened in 1936. With several U.S. airlines on the verge of bankruptcy,
Cimarron may never be aware of what it symbolized to the 2,500 people laid off indefinitely. The plant closed today, a victim of weak economy and strong competition.
They can ship a car in here for, say, $200, and any car we ship over there is triple that. $1,500, $1,800. And they've just been taken over. That's all there is to it. And naturally, if you can buy a car for around $5,000 compared to what we have to sell them for, it's a little different.
What happens after the last car goes now? What's the sequence of events in the next month or so?
Well, for now, we're to put the plant in a state of readiness in case they want to start it up again. And we have certain chores to accomplish in the next few months to make that all happen.
Now, a few of the Southgate people may be absorbed by GM's plant in Van Nuys, but the vast majority of them will be left unemployed. For the second consecutive day, U.S. Border Patrol agents...
2,500 workers said their final goodbyes in the General Motors auto plant at Southgate today as the very last car rolled off that assembly line at the plant today. Scott Osborne was there, and here's the farewell.
Production at General Motors Southgate plant reached the end of the line with a 1982 Cadillac Cimarron. It was white with red interior. One windshield wiper didn't work. Someone put a sign on the car. There goes my heart. About 500 workers watched the car's progress. They were the last of 2,500 employees who now seek work elsewhere. Among them, hood fitter Reginald Banks.
It's an end of an era. I don't like it, but what can you do?
What are you going to do now?
Retire, probably.
The final car moved on to cleanup man Darrell Haynes.
Well, I think it's just another part of America kind of disappearing.
Over the last 9 years, GM retooled the Southgate plant 5 times to keep up with consumer demands. In 1981, the plant closed for an entire year to change over to smaller cars. But the declining economy hurt the sales of Chevrolet Cavaliers and Cadillac Cimarrons. Inspector George McElroy watched all the cars come and go.
Well, after 30 years, almost 30 years here, it's just like losing some of your family, to lose the last car.
A cheer rose when the final car rolled off the assembly line. The workers shook hands with plant manager Bill Harden. One man kissed the last car off the line.
That's my heart. That's it. It's a sad day.
A very sad day.
It is. These are my loves, all these people.
It's been good working with you, Bill. It's been good working with you. And there go your heart, there go our heart also.
What followed was comparative silence. This after 4,455,587 vehicles rolled off the line at General Motors Southgate plant. Scott Osborne, Channel 2 News.
Bet you didn't know there was so much heart in an auto factory. But while Southgate closed its doors, there is a ray of hope for some of those newly unemployed auto workers you just saw. The United Auto Workers and Rockwell International said that they are starting a new pilot program aimed at retraining those laid-off workers, retraining them for work in the aerospace industry. Now, this project is getting off the ground with a $300,000 grant from the Federal Labor Department. 400.
Center 4's John Marshall has a report on the closing and on its impact on one of those workers.
Charles Anders. His friends on the GM assembly line call him Andy. He's been doing this for 34 years, but this is the last time. As it always has, Anders' day begins at 4:45 a.m. His family still sleeps as Anders gets going with coffee in the morning paper. He has known for a long time this day was coming, but as it began, it seemed like all the days before. As he arrived at the employees' parking lot at the Southgate assembly plant, the Datsuns, Toyotas, and Hondas, owned by the workers themselves, seemed more noticeable than ever.
It's just simply a shame. If you expect an American to buy an American-made car and you're driving to work in a foreign car, it doesn't look really very good. And it's something that people are going to have to get smart. I wonder how they feel now when they go home tonight in their foreign cars. That they're going to have to make the payments and they no longer have a job.
We got enough.
There have been layoffs at this plant before. Shutdowns to retool for model changes have always been part of the automobile business. But this time, it is different. There are no new models. There is no startup date. Some, including Andy Anders, think this plant could be closing down for good. GM officials say there's a possibility the assembly lines could be moving again in about a year. But no one knows for sure whether car buyers will develop a stronger appetite for GM's J cars, the small front-wheel drive Cavaliers and Cimarrons that were supposed to compete with Japanese and European models but have not so far. As Andy Anders inspected his very last GM automobile, the full impact of the moment seemed to hit him, suddenly and hard.
These people, I've known them, really, actually, I spend more time here than I do at home. It's really going to, it's almost breaking me down right now. Yeah, I hate to see it.
The plant manager drove the last car, a Cimarron, off the line. This may seem like a celebration, but it is not. For more than 2,000 of these people, it means the unemployment lines. And as for Andy Anders, it means an early retirement. At 56, he says, he had many productive years left, much to contribute. But now he won't.
Well, that's the last one.
From Southgate, John Marshall, News Center 4.
Auto industry analysts say the tentative contract agreement announced
to help them find a job very soon. That's because the last car rolled off the GM assembly line today, and some fear the plant may never be reopened. In the past, workers were given callback notices when plant shutdowns were temporary, and this time they have nothing. For the record, the last car was a Cadillac Cimarron, white with a red interior, and a windshield wiper that didn't work. But the goodbyes were emotional.
It's an end of an era. I don't like it, but what can you do?
Well, after 30 years, you know, almost 30 years here, it's just like losing some of your family, you know, to lose the last car.
The plant was opened in 1936 to build the big cars, the Buicks, the Oldsmobiles, the Pontiacs, the cars that made GM the nation's largest automaker. But times changed, sometimes quicker than GM could keep up. Big cars didn't sell. The Southgate plant went through several facelifts but had to close.
That's it. It's a sad day.
Very sad day.
It is.
These are my loves, all these people.
Well, if you're keeping track, that was car number 4,455,587 to roll off the Southgate line, and it is probably the last. The Border Patrol...
With General Motors' Southgate plant today, by the looks of the faces that you're seeing here, the full impact of the indefinite closure caught up with the workers. The plant is now closed, meaning 2,500 skilled workers are unemployed.
Terrible. I couldn't be sadder. There's a sign on the car that says, "There goes my heart." And these people are my heart. They're my family.
It breaks your heart. After 28.8 years, it kind of a big letdown.
Did you ever think you'd see this day?
Never.
What's it been like working in this plant?
Oh, I've enjoyed it. It's real great for me. It was a real good job I had. Real good trade. It's a skilled trade. It's not ordinary production.
What do you do next?
Well, I'm going to retire.
For those who can't afford to retire, the outlook is bleak as they start filling out resumes once again. Thousands of demonstrators...
Assembly line at a General Motors plant in Southgate today was a white 1982 Cadillac Cimarron. It signals the indefinite end of J-car production at that plant and a loss of jobs for more than 2,000 workers. News Center 4 reporter John Marshall was there this morning for the shutdown.
A few years ago, the assembly lines at GM's Southgate, California plant were turning out Cadillacs. 1 year ago, after millions of dollars were spent retooling the equipment, the first J-car rolled off the line. The front-wheel drive Cimarrons and Cavaliers were supposed to compete head-to-head with fuel-efficient, high-quality Japanese and European models, but they have not so far. So today, the last J-car rolled off the assembly line here, and more than 2,000 workers found themselves out of work. Outside in the employees' parking lot, the problem is clear. Datsuns, Toyotas, and Hondas. Tonight, they will be driven home by the employees who own them and are not expected to return to the GM plant for at least a year. From Southgate, John Marshall, News Center 4.
And when Kelly and I come back, Pat will be here with the local weather prospects.
Here's a strike-up shooting in the 7th. Big shot. Crossing over, leaving the 4-7-8.
John is caught betwixt and between. He knows the lane.